Good evening, Venu sir. Dr. Natarajan, good evening.
Good evening. Good evening. Venu sir, good evening.
എന്താ പരിപാടി എന്താ ഇത്? What is going to happen here?
ഒന്നും കണ്ടില്ല.
അത് മാത്രം ഐഡിയ ഇല്ല എന്താണെന്ന്. അനിൽ വിളിച്ച് നമ്മള് റെഡി.
ഇതുവരെ ഒന്നും കണ്ടില്ലേ?
അയ്യോ ഇല്ല, ഞാൻ വേറെ പ്രോഗ്രാം ഉണ്ട്, അത് ഇപ്പം കഴിഞ്ഞോളൂ, ഓടി വന്നതാണ്. മുല്ലശ്ശേരി അജിത്തിന്റെ ഒരു പ്രോഗ്രാം ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു, അതിന് ഇപ്പം കയറി വന്നേ.
Actually, there are 3 programs today simultaneously. Very sad.
I think Dr. Ashish is has joined. Dr. Ashish, are you there?
I'm there. Good evening. I'm there.
Okay. We are not seeing you. Are others seeing him?
No.
I am just actually returned from the hospital. I'm walking up the steps into entering my house, so my video is off for 2 minutes.
Okay.
Right.
But it sounds like the Kerala CSI chapter is having a lot of fun today.
Yes. So your lecture would be lecture on the go.
Yes. I know.
Unfortunately,
I'm missing the jokes because they're in Malayali. But like I said, it sounds like you're having fun, which is more important.
Yeah, we saw your photo. You are running the Boston Marathon.
No. I am now running up to my house so that I can get onto my Wi-Fi. I'm on my cell phone right now. How is everybody?
Everybody is trying to run faster and beat Corona.
I know.
But Bombay is becoming better.
Yes, but I think that now Kerala things are under a little better control. Even in Maharashtra and Kerala, both are coming under better control.
Kind of.
Yes. So how should we just have a Q&A, or how would you?
You can start and have a kind of talk for a couple of sometimes, because none of us are really sure why we are here. Anil asked us to join at 9 o'clock, and he said, so we don't know whether it's going to be some kind of trial, or we are going to be punished for something, or are we going to talk about something? We really don't know. You start off and teach us something.
No, I think one second, I'm just entering the house.
Sure.
So I will just have a few introductory words about. Yeah. So Ashish, I am Dr. Joni Joseph. We have Dr. Tiny Nair, Dr. Natarajan, and Dr. Venugopal all here in the screen, and we have about more than 150. I feel attendees spread all over. It's my pleasure as the president of the Kerala CSI to introduce, and also one of the members of this very interesting fitness group to introduce Dr. Ashish Contractor. He's we can say he's a pioneer of the real sports medicine and rehab medicine in India. He's a alumni of TN Medical College, Mumbai. After graduation, he has moved to Virginia University and had his post-graduation and worked there, and come back to India around 2000-2004, and he was the Reliance Center, and he is the head of he's the director of the rehab and sports medicine there. And apart from that, he is a head and promoter and pioneer of many organizations which are promoting exercise, including the Mumbai Marathon. He was the medical director, and also he is only certification trainer in the ACCM, the certification program for the exercise trainers from the medical side. So, Ashish, are you there? No,
he's just coming in.
No, I am there. I am there. I'm just going to shift over from my phone to my laptop. That's all I'm doing, but I'm very much there.
To tell you what was happening all the fastest 1.5-2 hours, we most of the cardiologists in Kerala, as just their family members are in this platform, we enjoyed discussing along with some jokes set up by our junior colleagues, fantastic jokes and roles. Along with that, we discuss about what is the roadmap of this fitness initiative, which is it's a long-term goal. You change yourself, you change your family. Along with that, that is a micro unit. then you change your workplace, your patients, and your then to community. This is the concept we have, and so we are a mixed group of people who is some of them very excellent sports person, some of them very sedentary. We have divided our group. We have done a survey and found that only about 5-6% is at the maybe somewhere near your level, maybe 2 or 3, nobody your level. Then that is A. B is who has some fitness, fair fitness. That is maybe about 20 to 30%. About 40% is some who is trying to come into the B, who has yours fitness, then come back. Then D and D, who has non-starters and non-gainers. So this is a group we have. So if you are ready, over to you. Otherwise, we will discuss a few points.
No, I'm ready. I'm ready. Are you able to see me and hear me?
Yeah, absolutely.
So thank you very much. I'm in an August gathering. Thank you, Dr. Sujay. Thank you, Dr. Joseph. I've met Dr. Venugopal, Dr. Nair in the past at various conferences. So I'm honored to be in this August gathering.
Yes,
so
yes.
what I thought I'll do is rather than, what I told Dr. Sujay, I have this very sort of formal talk. 9 o'clock on a Saturday night is not a time for a formal talk. It's more a time to, sort of enjoy. And since this was meant to be a talk for the doctors for themselves, I thought I'll just spend 5 minutes kind of laying what I consider as a relevant groundwork, which people can look for themselves, and then maybe open it up to some interesting Q&A, and that might be nice. So, if we look at the, CSI, means obviously everybody, by the time they've become the cardiologist, is somewhere between the ages of 30 upwards. And definitely as part of your training, we've all learned that, physical activity, exercise, all of that is extremely good for health. I know Dr. Johnny Joseph showed some wonderful pictures of himself doing very innovative strength training at home in last year's CSI when we spoke in December on that last session. And generally what I've seen from a lot of the Kerala doctors and what I can make out on the screen out here, everybody's at least looking very fit and hopefully is actually very, very fit as well. And it's just not that looks are deceptive. So I'm just thinking aloud that people probably fall in largely 3 buckets where personal exercise is concerned. There is one group which probably, knows it's good. They want to be doing it, but they really haven't done anything yet. They keep saying, okay, come on, we need to do it this week, but we are busy. This is there, that is there. There's a second group which is doing it, but wants to get to a more, how shall I say, formal level of doing it, do it more correctly, do it by guidelines and things like that. That would hopefully, I think, form the major chunk, maybe 50%, 25% are still wanting to do something, 50% are doing something, but they want to take it to the next level, maybe get more scientific, maybe have some personal goals they want to set. And the third group are people who are already doing a lot, but want to now achieve some higher level personal goal, run a marathon, climb a mountain, go on a pilgrimage somewhere, which they have to walk many kilometers at a time, different goals. So I think these are largely the 3 categories of people that you'll come across. My simple message to the first group, those who are thinking, oh, I need to do it, what to do, how much I do. My simple message is start by doing something. And this is the same thing we tell patients, right? It could even mean something like walking 5 minutes a day. I don't think there's anybody on this group or on this session who is, for whatever physical reason, not able to walk 5 minutes a day. I tell all our patients after an angioplasty, after a bypass surgery, just walk 5 minutes a day. And you may think it's like a joke. Oh, what is he saying? Walk 5 minutes a day. What's the meaning of that? Of course I can do it. But do it. Don't say you can do it. Do it in a formal manner. Set aside a time of day. And that time is a misconception, morning we need to get it done. It doesn't matter. Do it at 10 o'clock at night. So I wear a Fitbit around my wrist. And if I've not done, 10,000 steps, I live in a nice sort of complex. I walk at 10, 10:30, 11 at night also. So there is no ideal time of day. The ideal time is that suits you. All of you being cardiologists, most of you are, if I may use the word, self-employed in the sense that your time is yours. So you may be very busy at 7 o'clock in the morning sometimes with a PAMI or something, and suddenly at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you may suddenly have free time. So if you got time at lunch and you want to quickly get out of your scrubs and just walk in your neighborhood or the hospital neighborhood, go ahead and do that. The idea is that nobody is too busy. It's a matter of priority. I worked many years in Asian Heart House with Dr. Panda. Many of you may be knowing Dr. Panda, very busy cardiac surgeon. I've seen him walk on the treadmill at 11 o'clock at night, 11:30, 11:45. We've had meetings, people are standing taking notes and he's walking on his treadmill. It's 11:45, 12. He's just finished his last round of the day and he's doing it. But there really isn't any excuse of time. It's a matter of how you want to make it. Many of you may be knowing Eric Topol. Eric Topol is one of the best known cardiologists in the US. He headed the Cleveland Clinic cardiology division when he was 35. I mean, he's an avid exerciser, cyclist. So most of the world's leading cardiologists actually are fantastically fit and they're doing it. So the message is just start doing something. And once you start, the hardest part is getting started. Once you start and you get regularity, it will build up. The important thing is you need to consider it as part of your daily life. The moment you do that, you will get success. Often when I show it to a lay public, sometimes my first photograph that I show is a picture of me brushing my teeth. And I ask a question to the audience, and the question is that how many of you in the audience have done this activity in the last 24 hours? And they sort of look at you funnily and I say, raise your hands. And, obviously everybody raises their hands. My next slide, I have a picture of people walking, swimming, cycling, yoga, etc. Right? And I say, how many of you have done one of these things in the last 24 hours? And then very few people raise their hand. And they don't consider that a stupid question. When I asked that question about brushing the teeth, they thought that you think it's a stupid question. What is he asking? I mean, of course, when I ask you, have you exercised? You don't consider it a stupid question because all of us think that brushing a teeth is part of our normal life. That is something which has to be done. We don't look upon exercise as something that has to be done. When we do our exercise, we feel happy. So people may go on, "Arey, today I exercised," you put your collar up. But you will not go and tell people, "Arey, today I brushed my teeth." Correct? Because you consider it as part of your normal life. So I end by saying that you will truly get successful. And please listen to these words because they matter. You will get truly successful not when you get happy the day you exercise, but when you get unhappy the day you don't. And there is definitely a subtle difference between the two, right? In medicine, we call it corollary, right? So there's a difference between the two. Being happy the day you exercise versus being unhappy the day you don't because you consider part. And again, when I use the word exercise, it could mean 30 minutes of a walk. Exercise doesn't have to mean to, do something that you have to run 10 kilometers or cycle 1 hour. It doesn't. If you want to, you can, but you don't have to do that. The next level of people taking it is when they want to do something more. That's when you start looking at heart rate and all of those things. And people want to even achieve, we can do that in Q&A if people have that. I don't want to get into very technical things on 9 o'clock on a Saturday night if people don't have a specific question in that area. So I think the goal you need to set, look upon the same way as you're talking to your patient. Start with something, it can be very basic, but the main principle of exercise prescription is also progression. You need to progress. Whatever we do, whether it's studies, whether it's work, the progression principle is important. Start very low. Don't set some massive targets. Start with 10 minutes, 20 minutes, and just progress till you reach a point you're happy with. That's what I thought I will just start off with and lay it as a food for thought before we can open it up to a discussion.
Dr. Ashish, what would you consider the bare minimum in terms of steps walked or the distance covered or a calorie burned or vigorous exercise? What would be your suggestion to that group which are not doing?
Yeah, so I think it's a good question. You have organizations like AHA or the American College of Sports Medicine, which are constantly giving guidelines as minimum. So what they say from a guideline perspective is 150 minutes of moderate intensity exercise. Okay, 150 minutes could be like say 30 minutes, 5 days a week, or 75 minutes of vigorous physical exercise. And the cutoff between moderate and vigorous is 6 METs, METs. All cardiologists are familiar with METs, but I'll I won't be surprised if everybody doesn't really know exactly what a MET is, because we're just used to writing a treadmill machine automatically says that patient went 8 METs, 10 METs. So just for those who may have forgotten it from their textbook days, 1 MET is the amount of oxygen that you consume at rest. So all of us are at rest at this moment. We're all consuming 1 MET, which is 3.5 ml of oxygen per kilogram of body weight. So when the treadmill says we are at 6 METs, that's you're consuming 6 into 3.5, right? Roughly 21 ml per kg per minute. So 6 METs is the cutoff between moderate and vigorous. So 6 METs is like walking at a pace of covering 1 kilometer somewhere between 10 and 12 minutes. So that would be about 150 minutes of that, or 75 minutes of vigorous is the minimum. The way I like to do it for myself, I'll tell you what I do for myself and the way I do it. I consider two things. I consider what I call lifestyle physical activity in one bucket, and I consider formal exercise in another bucket. And let me explain what that means. So I came walking up the steps just now. My building doesn't have a lift, but even if it did, I would walk up. I live on the 3rd floor. I parked the car somewhere and I walked up, right? So those were probably 250 steps from my car. Now, that's not called exercise, but that's part of my daily physical activity. So you should try and get 8 to 10,000 steps as part of my daily physical activity. And I have a Fitbit, today even phones have this thing. In addition to that, I try for myself 3-4 times a week to formally run. Like this morning, I'm training for a triathlon. So we did what's called a brick. Brick is a bicycle and running back to back. So I cycled hard for an hour and a half, and then I ran back to back for an hour. So that's in addition to the daily activity. See, what all of us are good at, we are white collar workers. We are also very good at exercising for half an hour, 40 minutes, 4-5 days a week, and we feel very happy. But the rest of the 23 hours we spend being as sedentary as we can. You wear a pedometer, and as a regular doctor, see, cardiologists at least get some activity because they go from clinic to maybe cath lab to the ward to, echo, etc. So you get some. But if you get in the habit of not using the elevator, then you can get as a cardiologist making 10,000 steps a day is not difficult. But in the lockdown, I've seen people, typically office-going people, they won't even do 2,000. So that is so much of a difference. While the class 4 worker, poor fellow's working all day long on his feet, the ward boy in the hospital. The ward boy in the hospital is easily getting 10,000, 12,000, 15,000. But he's never doing formal exercise. So I believe that as enlightened members of society, you should be aiming for the best of both worlds. Be as physically active as you can and do formal exercise. Then you get the best of both worlds. Today, we have a phrase we call sitting is the new smoking. Earlier, we were seeing that, what you need to exercise vigorously. Then you were saying that, don't just be sedentary. Now just sitting for long periods of time, like we do at conferences all day long, is bad. So just, getting up in between is a good habit.
Yeah, I think that's good because, for example, my OPD, I don't have chairs. The patient lies down for me to examine, but I don't sit, right? We have 3 cubicles. So entire day in the hospital, I'm standing, number one. Till today, I've never used the hospital elevator, so that I always climb up and down stairs. So, at the end, my watch shows that I've climbed 30 steps. I've done 20,000 steps and 30 floors. It is not because I'm doing some vigorous exercise, but like you said, my lifestyle is built upon where I automatically walk.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That is a perfect example of real life doing it. And you are doing it to accommodate. That's what I tell everybody. You need to do it in your lifestyle. Your lifestyle means having 3 OPDs, doing this, doing that. Somebody else's lifestyle may be different. Many people are corporate type people. They're in boardrooms. So I tell them in a boardroom, if you're having a short meeting, have a standing meeting. Fair enough, 1 hour, 2 hour boardroom, you may not do standing, but a 10-minute meeting can certainly be standing. It's also crisp. People talk to the point and move out. Maybe at CSI we can have some few standing meetings, Dr. Venugopal sir.
Yes.
Huh? We can start. I'll take the trademark for that concept.
Yeah, I have a question. Do you advocate exercise all days a week, or you advise where break?
That's an excellent question. So as I heard I was there for the last 20 minutes of the previous talk. Somebody was talking about treadmill, orthopedic stress, etc. So firstly, being active, I advise every day. Like Dr. Nair said, being on the feet, walking up the steps in the hospital, all of that every day. That there is no question about. Formal exercise, right? Like running, etc. If you're doing a high impact exercise, such as say a running, playing a game of tennis, especially singles, playing squash, things like that, then I would say, do it 3 to 4 days a week. But if you're doing a moderate intensity activity like a walk, like a brisk walk, and you enjoy doing it, a brisk walk can be done even 7 days a week. It should not cause you a problem. There's nothing wrong in exercising most days of the week, but there is more orthopedic stress when you're not giving your body at least 1, preferably 2 days off in the week.
The one important point, Dr. Ashish said is that if you are going for progressive loading to improve your fitness level, that time you need a higher level, and that needs a rest for body to rebuild and recuperate. If you are maintaining your own achieved level, and if that is the only time you have, that's where you can do even daily. Some people are doing daily. And again, there is a term that has come, exercise snacking. What Ashish and Dr. Tiny said. Exercise snacking is even 1 minute, 2 minutes high intensity climbing up and down, add to your fitness, add to your maintenance of fitness. And there is a term called high intensity intentional physical activity, HIPA, and mortality has been shown to be beneficial. So the intermittent high intensity exercise also has been quite useful for busy people like me. For me, I am doing alternate high intensity only, maybe 10 minutes, 5 minutes, that's all, with the kettlebell or some other thing, or even so alternate day, you can mix up anyway as the time permits.
The only point I will make about high intensity, both for yourselves and your patients, is build up a good baseline first. Because if you're straight away going into high intensity without having a good baseline built up, you will have a higher risk of having injuries and things like that. So build up your baseline first and then get into it.
Can I ask you something? See, I normally, let's say, walk about 20,000 feet, steps, and walk about 15 kilometers a day. I'm very active, climb about 30, 35 flights of stairs. Now, after watching Dr. Johnny, he actually was doing a video, and then I started what he describes as farmer's walk. So, I found it very interesting. What I did was, I carried 2 of those medicine update books on my hand. And walk at the end of my usual morning exercise. I start exercising at 5:30 in the morning. So at the end of my usual exercise, I carry those books and make about 3-4 rounds on the terrace of my house. It's fairly big. So is that advisable at my age? I am 61.
Sir, age is no limit.
No limit.
Let's be very, very, very clear on that. All of you must have heard of Dr. Farokh Udwadia. He's considered as the sort of doyen of Dr. Udwadia is 91. He still drives his own car. COVID, of course, has prevented him from going to Beach Kennedy Hospital as often as he would. 7:30 in the morning, you'll see him come down his slope, runs up the steps of the hospital. Mind is sharper than my mind for sure. So age is no bar. I will tell you, my own mother, she is now 76. She exercises 4-5 days a week, going to the gym, lifting weights. There have been studies where people at the age of 90 have started exercise, not people previous exercisers, started exercise, strength training. So please, age is just a number, and don't say my age.
Ashish, there was a question. Yes. Whether if you do exercise at night, will it affect your sleep quality?
So that's a good question. And see, so if you are exercising late night, you might get a little bit pepped up, and you might have a harder time sleeping. But sir, in my personal opinion, I found it quite variable. There are people who exercise this, and because they get a little fatigued, they even sleep nicer. And normally when I'm talking about this exercise at night, I mean more like taking a stroll after dinner, 20-30 minutes. Just, a whole day has been a lazy day, get those little extra steps. I don't advise that after dinner you go for like a 10-kilometer run type of exercise. Walking in your neighborhood for 10 minutes, 12 minutes, half an hour, 1 hour before you sleep, that kind of. So I won't advise vigorous exercise just prior to sleep.
Sir, as a experience, if I get a good stroll after dinner at night, I get a better sleep. I mean, I always felt that.
Actually, Tiny, there is a saying in Malayalam. That is, people have advised a light exercise after supper.
Okay.
There's a saying in Malayalam.
Okay.
Also helps in things like blood sugar and all that for those who have diabetes.
Dr. Ashish, can I ask you something?
Of course.
As regards fat burning,
Haji.
The aim of exercise is to burn fat, particularly for those who have this abdominal truncal fat. I suppose you should do a little moderate to vigorous activity a few days a week at least. This walking 20,000 steps at slow pace during the course of the day have been shown to be better than not doing anything. However, in terms of burning fat, not for somebody like you who have no fat to burn actually, for the conventional with a lot of truncal fat, what is your suggestion?
Okay, so now we are getting into very interesting territories, which is good fun. Let's delve deeper into some of these, more scientific concepts. So what you said, Dr. Natarajan, actually is interesting when you speak about fat burning. So one is that the goal of exercise shouldn't just be fat burning. From a cardiologist's point of view, I'll tell you the 4 categories that exercise is fabulous from the heart perspective. Okay, one is it's anti-atherosclerotic. So pretty much every risk factor that is contributing, right from your sugars to your cholesterol to your BP, are taken, adiposity is taken better care of with exercise. So exercise has got this anti-atherosclerotic property. It's got an anti-arrhythmic property. The stronger you make your heart, the better it can withstand arrhythmia. It's been shown that people who even get into bad rhythms, the exercising heart always sort of handles that better. Okay, there are anti-ischemic properties. So again, your ability to handle ischemia tends to be much better when you are exercising regularly. Okay, so exercise has all of these properties. Now, the conventional thinking is that when you're at a moderate intensity exercise, you actually burn more fat. So they say roughly about 70% of your maximum heart rate is the ideal fat burning zone. Okay, and so people who want to burn fat, so typically you go to a gym also, and you see the equipment, they'll say fat zone and things like that. So at a 70% or a moderate intensity, you will burn more fat than carbohydrate, but the absolute amount of calories you burn at a higher intensity is always more. So interestingly, at a higher intensity, your absolute caloric burn may be more, but your relative caloric burn from fat may be less. Those of you who may have done metabolic testing, okay, if you have a machine which does your actual VO2 testing, there's something called a RQ or a RER, the respiratory exchange ratio, or the respiratory quotient, which is your carbon dioxide upon your oxygen. So when that quotient is 1, that time you're burning pure carbohydrate. When the quotient is 0.7, you're burning pure fat. In between is the thing. So when you're at max exercise, you're at 1. Your body's burning only carbohydrate. But again, it's been shown, like Dr. Joseph is talking, that when you're doing high intensity, one of the benefits of high intensity exercise is throughout the rest of the day also, you tend to burn slightly higher calories as compared to a lower intensity. So what's the simple message? I have a simple take-home message in all of this. First, let's build up duration. If you want to do aerobic exercise, don't focus so much on intensity initially from an aerobic point of view. Build up your duration. Build it to 20, 30, 40 minutes, right? So 30 to 40 minutes is a nice, what I call sweet spot. It's not that long that it eats up into your day, and it's long enough to feel good, get some benefits, and it's a practical amount of time unless you want to be a high-level sportsman. Once you're achieving that 30, 40 minutes, then keep on increasing the intensity so that you reach the highest intensity which you can comfortably maintain for 30 to 40 minutes. That's a simple take-home message. Getting to Dr. Tiny's point about or your point about, lifestyle physical activity, like what he's been talking about that he does a lot is lifestyle physical activity, right? Standing, walking up and down in the thing. Research has shown that high intensity exercise, purely from a cardiac point of view, when you're isocaloric, meaning lifestyle physical activity, same calories, high intensity, same, the high intensity does give you added protective benefits. So again, a rule of thumb which we use from Ayman Lee and Paffenberger, they are the gurus of epidemiology, and Dr. Barry Franklin always tells me this. Starting at a slow, moderate intensity exercise is a great starting point for those who have previously not exercised. Once you do that, and you've been doing it consistently, then you must strive to go to a higher intensity, provided there is no contraindication. It's as straightforward as that. Does that make sense?
Right, it does. And a few words about intermittent fasting. It is coming up in a big way. And what's your comment about that? Because once you know the importance of diet, as part of the lifestyle?
I just blasted somebody who was doing intermittent fasting yesterday. So I spoke a lot to my dietitian about it.
There's a lot of recent hype about intermittent fasting.
So here is my take. Intermittent fasting and high-fat diets, okay, have both become very in topics over the last 1 year. I remember when I was in America, that time I was interning for a short while with Dr. Dean Ornish. Many of you may have heard of Dean Ornish. So I spent 3-4 months with him in California at his retreat to see his. And in the mid-90s, America or the cardiology world was all about low fat, carbohydrate, high carb, low fat, high carb. So all the food, etc., were made low fat. But what they did is they kept adding a lot of sugar. So suddenly obesity also went up, diabetes went up. Now we've come to a point where fat was first a villain. Now people like Atkins diet and all, fat is the hero. I personally think that food is neither villain nor hero. Food is food. Everything taken in a right quantity makes sense. And there have been research shown that both diets, the Atkins diet and the Ornish diet, as long as you stick to it, the important thing is sticking to it. Ironically, both of them work. Now, the point is the Atkins diet or the high-fat diet, and to some extent even intermittent fasting, their whole thing is based on the fact of what's called the sort of the insulin sugar metabolic ratios. Okay, the metabolic effects of doing all this. So I use the phrase metabolic magic. The hardcore proponents of it keep talking about a lot of the metabolic magic that goes into it. I am not in that camp. I am in the camp which believes that a lot of these diets, whether it's the high-fat diet or the intermittent fasting diet, ultimately work by simple mathematics. You eat less. If you eat less and you're ultimately in caloric deficit, your weight will come down, your sugar will be better, your cholesterol will be better. When your body is in breakdown mode, everything comes down, it does get better. So paradoxically, even with that high-fat diet, because at the end of the day, how much butter can you eat? How much just meat can you eat? How much ghee can you eat? How much butter will you eat without a bread, right? If you're cutting down, Atkins and all recommend that your carb content should be like, not more than 10-20 grams a day. Like one slice of bread also you can barely eat. So when you truly follow it, ultimately you're eating less. Intermittent fasting, people start with 4-hour fast. Then they say 6-hour fast. Today I spoke to one doctor in the hospital who was complaining of a lot of headache and all. When I questioned her more, she's on 18-hour fasts. So her open window, her food window was, she told me, I think it was 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. or something like that, right? So at the end of the day, it will work. But it's working because you're sort of starving yourself or you're cutting out. How practical is it to maintain it lifelong? I don't know. But for an individual person for a short period of time, I think it can work. I think it's hard to do an 18 or a 12 or a 16-hour intermittent fasting your entire life. It's hard to do, no carbohydrate in your diet, especially in the Indian diet, South Indian diet. I mean, imagine South Indian diet without any rice, without any this completely. That's hard. And if you do that religiously, then yes, you're cutting out so many of calories which you ordinarily would eat that you will lose weight. So I believe they can work, but I'm not convinced that they work based on a lot of what the sort of the metabolic theories behind it. That's my personal view.
So I think one point is that, like Dr. Natarajan said, see, the South Indian diet is loaded with carbs. You talk to any patients or even ourselves, we eat idli, dosha, rice, chapati, whatever. Our diet is how much of fat we take. Hardly, even if you are a non-vegetarian, you take a piece of chicken or a mutton, that hardly any fat. It's loaded with carbs, right? So that is one. I think two interesting questions have come, Dr. Ashish. One is yoga useful?
Yoga is 100% useful. I'll tell you the challenge when we answer yoga questions, okay? And this is a close, friendly audience, so I'm just being very, very frank about it. The challenge is because yoga is our Indian science, ancient science, there's a lot of emotion that goes into studying it rather than talking in a pure science manner. And especially in today's environment, even more so, where there's a lot of that emotion on it. So seen from a science, let me divide yoga into two ways. The first I will call true yoga. True yoga, I mean, or yoga as it's known, as a yogic way of life. They have these components, ahar, vichar, vihar, all of that, right? The way you live your life. It generally says you must have a clean mind, sort of sleep early, wake up early, have a light diet, meditate, do some asana. So all of that you do. That is definitely a heart preventive type diet and is very useful. But what happens is we like shortcuts as a population. So people say, "Arey, instead of exercise, I'll do yoga." And their idea of yoga is twice a week they'll put on the TV, sit like that on their sofa and do some deep breathing or something for 10 minutes, 15 minutes and consider that as exercise. Now that is not going to substitute. So doing a yoga asana for breathing, meditation, very good for health, but that's not going to substitute a 30 to 40-minute walk. So you don't tell me, should I walk 40 minutes or should I do yoga? I'll say do both. So yoga as a way of life, absolutely excellent and must be done. But let's not get into these either or type of situations.
One more interesting question there.
I think Dr. Venugopal's had a question. He's been trying to say something for a while.
What is the ratio of aerobic versus strength training in your daily exercise pattern?
Okay, excellent question. So if we go back in science, aerobic exercise, the word aerobic was coined by Dr. Kenneth Cooper. Kenneth Cooper's still there. By the way, Kenneth Cooper runs the Cooper Clinic in Dallas. And I think in the late 50s, he coined the word. He must be, I don't know, but he must be in his mid-90s, as far as I know, very active. And the Cooper Clinic still.
In March, he completed 90. In March, this March 90.
Exactly, right? So I don't know. I met him only once, but I know Steve Blair and Neil Gordon and all who work with him very closely. This came up. So aerobics has been known since the 60s, 70s, etc., and been studied very deeply. Early years, 60s, 70s, 80s, strength training was taboo, especially taboo because momentarily your pressure goes up a lot. So they put these transducers and they found in very heavy weightlifters, pressures even momentarily went up to 400 millimeters of mercury and things like that, right? Momentarily, and that scared off everyone. But over time, research has been done and it shows that all the good benefits that we get from aerobic exercise, you also get from strength training. And strength training has another very important thing. It helps maintain muscle mass. As one ages, you don't need to do strength training to, show off your bicep or, take out your shirt like a Salman Khan. You need for activities of daily living, and women more than men. Because from the age of 30 onwards, your muscle mass, every decade you start experiencing a loss in muscle mass. And that accelerates after the 60s and the 70s. So you need muscle mass to carry your carry-on baggage to go for a weekend holiday or go for your weekend CSI conference. In time of COVID and all of us have all become, grocery shoppers ourselves, you need strength to carry 10 kilo bag from the grocery shop. You need strength to carry that bag from the down to put it up on the shelf, right? So you need strength to be able to function. So to answer the direct question, strength training 2 or 3 days a week would be ideal. You don't need to do multiple sets. You don't have to do 10 exercises for your chest and 10 exercises for your bicep. No, today I was in a hurry. So when I finished work, I did a very quick strength workout. I did a workout literally in 15 minutes. I didn't even change my clothes. One set. So every time, supposing you can carry a water bottle here. I've got a water bottle. This is 1 liter bottle. Okay, 1 liter bottle with water is a 1 kilogram weight. So somebody who's just starting, I can just stand and I can, this can be my dumbbell. I don't have to get, expensive equipment, right? So if I'm doing this 10 times, it's 1 set. So if you do 1 set for your major muscle groups, what are your major muscle groups? Your chest, your shoulder, your back, bicep, tricep, back, quadricep, hamstring, calves. 1 set, 10 to 15 repetitions, 2-3 times a week, which can be done as quickly as 15 minutes. Great. You like that, you want to do more, do 2 sets, 2 up to 3 sets. You enjoy that, like a person like Dr. Joseph enjoys strength training. Great, do more of it, right? So let's not go into either or. Let's do a mix and match. But yes, strength training can be done much quicker because aerobic, you're walking for 30-40 minutes. One quick, simple, compact strength training, if you want, you can even do it in 10 or 15 minutes. It's simple home things. Today you have these TheraBands, rubber bands. Body weight is available. You can lean against the wall and you can do a little bit better, squat, everything is there. So, you don't need equipment. You just need to want to do it.
That's a very pertinent point that you're making. A lot of people who exercise that I'm friendly of, either they are addicts of strength training, or they are addicts of aerobic exercise. 7 days a week, 10 to 15 kilometers of running without any interruption. I'm sure you must be coming across a lot of people like that. This right mix of doing both is a rare thing, in my personal opinion.
There is a tendency in, especially in states, something called CrossFit. They combine both together. Generally, runners, they go to the highest level and they get the endorphin, and they had something called runner's high. Just like alcohol or even deepest religious thing, it is a high for them, and they won't like to get away from that. The same thing is for the gym pros also. So at the same time, nowadays there can be a mixture of these two. That's called CrossFit, high intensity aerobics with strength training together. Maybe it's a bit hectic.
Simple message: do what you enjoy doing, because when you enjoy doing it, you will stay long term. If somebody enjoys walking and I tell them, cycle karo, or somebody enjoys cycling, I say swimming, they won't do it long term. Anybody ask me what's the best exercise? Best exercise is the one you will end up doing long term. Best exercise is what you enjoy. Just move. Forget all the fancy things in it. Just move. As long as you do that, you're going to benefit.
There is a question. What are you doing while you are doing strength training? Should you take excess calories? There are two parts for it. If you are going for incremental training, you need higher calories. And the basic thing is that you first have enough amount of protein, water, and vitamins. And then if you want to have more and more, see, for example, somebody taking about 100 kg, 1 rep of deadlift, you want to go up and high, you also need excess calories also. But basically, for a strength trainer, protein and water and vitamins are the things.
Let me talk a little bit about strength training and protein. I'll tell you one thing, sir, in my experience of going to a gym now for about 25, 30 years, everybody who goes to the gym now and they are lifting weights, they think they need lots of protein. The amount of protein they think they need and they actually need is very different. So, everybody for good health needs 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram body weight, right? So if you're 70 kilos, you need 70 into 0.8, 56 gram protein. If you're doing serious strength training or serious aerobic activity, which very few people actually end up doing, then that amount goes to somewhere between 1.3, 1.5. Nobody, what you'll find is moment people become gym, they'll buy those dabbas which are whey protein, which is like this. They're actually this big. If you've not seen, the whey protein boxes are actually this big and this wide. I think you become strong just by lifting. Like in medical college, we became strong by lifting Grey's Anatomy. So same way you become strong just by lifting those boxes, and they are all overdosing on protein. So yes, in our Indian diet, vegetarian diet, sometimes protein can be inadequate, and you may need to supplement it. But please understand what you're doing and supplement it intelligently. Dr. Sujay asked on the chat that is whey protein good? Yes, whey protein is good, but in the right quantity. If you've calculated that you need 80 grams of protein and you're getting 60 grams in diet, then add 20 grams. Now don't add 40, 60. Because excess protein, and I make a joke when I talk to bodybuilders, what does excess protein do? All it does is comes out in the urine. So you're spending all that so much money just to get expensive urine. When your kidneys can't handle it anymore, the kidneys pack up. So actually, we've had few cases, not many cases, but few cases of these people overdosing on protein through supplements, ending up with kidney problems. So that is important.
See, the bodybuilding and strength training are both different. So
correct.
For bodybuilding,
absolutely.
Generally you need a higher number of reps, maybe around 8 to 10 with the moderate.
Agreed.
For training, just number of repetition, but incrementally higher. Here we are adding myofibrils, not myocytosol of the muscle fiber. So muscle cell. So what we need is a myofibrillar hypertrophy, not myosolic hypertrophy.
Dr. Johnny's gone deep into muscle building. I can tell. I'll show you all an interesting thing. Why? Because this is one of the Fitbits I use. I've been using this. I think a crowd like you will be interested. I hope it's charged. So this is very interesting. I've been using it for our patients, and every once in a while I use it for myself. Okay, let me see if it works right now. If I've charged it. This is a company called Fourth Frontier out of Bangalore. It's an Indian-based company, and just from this, let me see. While I'm talking to you, I'll connect it to my phone. I can get a live ECG, and it gives me my breathing rate. So it's a very, very interesting kind of a thing. Let's see. While I'm talking to you, I'll put it on my chest and I'll show you how this works. Meanwhile, if you have any questions, you ask me.
Did you have your any food you have? You like to have something from your wife?
No. Today is very strange. Normally I would be home much earlier, but I'm enjoying this so much that this is food for thought. So I'm enjoying it, and tomorrow I've set a very late time to exercise. So I'm going to sleep late today, and I'm going to relax and wake up late. So don't worry, I'm not. So let's see. I've worn it. Let's try and connect.
What is the wearable that you're using? You said
this I got is a Fitbit. It's a Fitbit Charge 2. I find it quite accurate. So now see, this is what I've got. I put this strap on, and it's connected to this. And let me see. So it's getting my activity summary. I'll show it to you once I get it.
Chinese Apple?
No. So this what I'm wearing. This is a Fitbit.
Is it iPhone?
No, this is a Fitbit.
Yeah.
What I'm wearing is a Fitbit. But let me show you something really interesting, which as cardiologists will be very excited. Okay. So I showed you what I was wearing, right? I did it right in front of you. Okay. And now look at this.
Oh, it gives you the ECG.
Yeah. Same thing, Apple Watch also gives you the same thing.
Third, that is you have to put your finger on it.
No. Yeah, you have to just touch the crown.
You have to put your finger on it. So you can't have it live while exercising. Not only do you have to put your finger on it, it doesn't get you from your chest. An ECG reading from the chest is a lot more accurate. So today when we are doing cardiac rehab, and thanks to COVID, I've got patients in Delhi. I don't have so many in Kerala, but all over who just have this, and their cardiologists or me, we're just monitoring them. And this via WhatsApp, I can send it to you anytime. So this, I can actually share this with Dr. Joseph or with Dr. Sujay or something, and they can see it real time as we speak. So it's quite a technology. And why I'm so excited, all these years I've been chasing it. These are Indian companies that are making it.
So you wear it on the chest, or?
Yes, on the chest. I just wore it right in front of you. Yeah. Oh. And it also not only gives this, when I'm exercising, it gives me breathing frequency data, which is very interesting.
Okay.
So Dr. Joseph, you will be interested. Typically, we look at intensity via heart rate, or we look at intensity by rating of perceived exertion. A new metric today people are also looking at is breathing frequency as the measure of intensity. This is also giving me impact. And because of COVID, I told the manufacturers to work it also gives me a QTC interval if I need it.
What is this called? What is it called?
It's called Fourth. The company is called Fourth Frontier, the number 4th. FOURTH, Fourth Frontier. Yeah. So this is very interesting. So in fact, let me see. As I'm talking, Dr. Sujay is online, correct? Is Dr. Sujay online there?
Sujay was attending.
Yeah. So I'm actually I'm sent my live ECG link to him. If he's online, I don't know, Dr. Joseph, if I've stored your number in my phone, in my WhatsApp. If I have it.
Sujay is not in the discussion panel.
Do you have my, Dr. Joseph, do you have my number stored on your phone by any chance?
Yeah.
Just send me one hello as a WhatsApp. Just send me one hello so I get it. And I'll live stream my ECG to you. Dr. Sujay, he's come on panel. Can you see my ECG? You're on mute.
Fantastic.
So today, to be able to monitor our patients, see, for all of you, and I'll tell you why it's very useful. You're sending home people from PAMIs and things like that, right? Tomorrow, you want to be able to monitor the person at home for, even an hour a day, or somebody saying, I'm feeling a little bit uncomfortable. Dr. Johnny, I've sent it to you. I'm feeling a little bit uncomfortable. See, Dr. Sujay is showing it. There we go. You could see it, right?
Yeah. But
No, show it.
Yeah. So you're like, there we go.
Okay. Yeah. We can see that bottom here.
Yeah. So that's what's really interesting, So today technology, so it's called Fourth Frontier. It's a Bangalore-based thing. The website is fourthfrontier.com, and it's really, really interesting. So lots of interesting technologies are there today which can while exercising, it also gives me impact, how much body weight I'm putting down. So it's all good fun to play with it. So this is what I done. Now I'll take it out. So now it will stop.
Oh, yes. Very interesting.
Yeah, this is it. This is all it is. This is it.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
I actually took it out of my bag, put it on, connected, and sent it while in the middle of this, conference. I suddenly remember that I have it, and I might as well show it. Anyway, yes.
Sir, any specific exercise advice for the ladies? That is, how should they be? What should be the percentage of their strength training versus aerobic exercise?
So ladies tend to ignore strength training. So they should not ignore strength training. They should do it, and elderly ladies even more, because again, elderly ladies are very prone to osteoporosis. And all of you know the worst thing that can happen in your 60s, 70s is osteoporosis. You have a fall, you get a hip fracture. 50% of people with hip fracture, active life finishes. So
Very important.
strength training in ladies is even in some ways more important, I feel, than men, especially elderly ladies. I used to make my grandmother, I mean, she's now passed away, but till the 80, 85, I used to make her lift water bottles and things like that. So just simple home things.
So it's very important, and they should not have any feeling that they won't get any muscle hypertrophy. Even if the gym bros tries hard with all steroids, it is very minimal for us. But they won't. Young ladies don't have to fear of any muscle hypertrophy because they does not have any testosterone enough for that. And again, the elderly, it is very important. I have tried on my mother-in-law. She feels very fine with the body weight only.
So normally people take food and mithai and all, and they make their mother-in-law happy. Dr. Joseph is teaching her exercise. Chalo, he is truly giving the gift of health. No, somebody had an interesting question. I want to address this. In the chat, I saw this about badminton and sudden cardiac deaths.
Sudden death and
okay, so let's talk about sudden cardiac death. Of late, I've been talking at various venues, and I make these very provocative titles. I call it that "Can Exercise Kill You?" That's my slide title of my talk in some of these. But it's a serious topic. Let's talk about it. The person asked about badminton, but it's the same thing whether we talk about badminton or tennis or running. The running tends to be more. So first of all, statistically, and in New England Journal, they've got a lovely meta-analysis looking at 11 years marathon data in the US. The incidence of sudden cardiac death is 1 in so many million participant hours. Okay, incident of cardiac arrest is 1 in, again, so many 100,000 hours. So the incidence is very low. But what happens is when a person is exercising and they die, it is more dramatic. If there is a marathon on a Sunday and somebody dies, next Monday morning in the newspaper, that's the headline. All of you are cardiologists. How many of you know people who had a heart attack while sleeping at home, while watching TV, while sitting in the office? But somebody sitting at home watching TV, next day the newspaper will make a headline, person having heart attack while watching TV. Right? There are far more people. So the incidence is low, but when it happens, it's dramatic. So I've got 2 points I want to make about this to this audience. Number one, in my opinion, my experience, my reading, a person who dies during exercise. First of all, let's divide into 2 categories. Sorry, I should make this point. One, we'll roughly say, younger, so 30, 35 and below, and older. So in the older people, it's overwhelmingly coronary artery disease. Okay, that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the younger ones where it's overwhelmingly cardiomyopathy, anomalous origin of coronary arteries, sudden arrhythmic death syndrome, now they call it, when they don't understand why the heart is just going to arrest. I'm not talking about that category now, okay? Where there is some congenital issue, familial issue. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the 35, 40 plus where it's overwhelmingly CAD. In a normal, healthy heart, one strong bout of exercise, whatever that bout may be, is almost never enough to cause a cardiac arrest. The people who were on the edge, they already got plaque. That bout of exercise, maybe that final push, which caused that plaque rupture to happen at that moment in time, caused the MI and caused the arrest. Okay, like somebody has a, very stressed, comes home from work, starts smoking 2-3 cigarettes in a row, and he has the MI. That those 2-3 cigarettes act as the trigger. So that exercise, the vigorous exercise, acts as a trigger to cause the ultimate MI, but that's not in a healthy heart. That person had issues going on. in a healthy heart, unless you do something crazy like some 24-hour run in a desert, no fluid, something, very abnormal, it's not going to happen. That's the first thing. The second point I want to make to everybody, especially the audiences I talk to, is that please understand that we all know that exercise and therefore fitness, it gives you protection. It gives you protection against lots of things, including cancer, stroke, etc., and certainly heart attacks. It does not give you immunity, which means that just because you're fit does not mean you can't have a heart attack. I give the example to people saying like a car. If we say that this car has got very good brakes, just because a car has got good brakes does not mean it can't have an accident. Good brakes are required to prevent an accident, no doubt. But just by having good brakes does not prevent an accident by itself, right? So fitness is giving you protection, but it's not giving you immunity. So yes, there are. The other final point, I want to make is that in the same meta-analysis over so many 100,000 people, they found that at least 30 to 40% of people who had what we call the sudden cardiac death, and you will see it in your own practice, or sudden heart attack, they have warning signs a few days before, a few weeks before, which they choose to ignore. And the two cardinal warning signs are chest heaviness and discomfort. That rarely people ignore, but the one they ignore the most is what I call unusual shortness of breath with usual activity. Which means if somebody is routinely running 10 kilometers and then they start feeling short of breath now only in 9 or in 8, or they have to slow down the pace, that's the person I'm worried about. Somebody has never run in their life and they run 1 kilometer, so they'll be short of breath. That's not abnormal. That is lack of fitness. Now, Dr. Nair is walking up and down his hospital floors every day. He's doing 30 floors a day. So him getting tired with just 20 floors a day is abnormal. But by itself, 20 floors is a lot. Most people will get tired in only 10 floors. So if a person who's not used to climbing steps climbs up 10 floors, I'm not worried. But Dr. Nair gets tired in 20 floors, that worries me because his normal is 30. So that change people tend to ignore. Arey, ye to normal exercise ke baad hota hai. So that is something we need to educate our people about. Nature, God, whatever you want to call it, does give warning signs quite often. Yes, there are cases where there is zero warning also. I'm not saying that there isn't. But often there are some prodromal, some warning signs which tend to be ignored.
I'll just make a point regarding badminton. See, in badminton, sometimes there are unusual rallies, even when you get into a real play. So that is maybe the point Dr. Ashish was raising. And secondly, up to 40 or 50 is okay. Then beyond that, if somebody wants to play serious badminton, like impact games, then they should have the real protective training for the bone and joint strength training. Otherwise, they may get into some form of a knee or ankle injury, and that ends their athletic career and even if their exercise program. This has happened to many of my friends or patients I know.
I think we are reaching 10 o'clock.
Yeah, no, I think we started for 30 minutes. Now we have gone
But
when
Ashish has not had
Sujay,
food and he has straight come from the
No, when Dr. Sujay told me that
10 o'clock
that 9 o'clock we'll do on a Saturday night, I asked him 3 times, like, are you sure? I mean, will somebody be there on the other end? So I must give a cheers to the Kerala, CSI chapter for being so enthusiastic and having so many senior people and listening and participating. I'm truly amazed. So I had a good time.
Give us some parting thoughts and something to go home with on a weekend.
No. I think the simple parting thoughts is think of the brushing of your teeth. Yes. I think if you just keep that in mind, and you track it. I'll show you something. You might think I'm a little bit stupid, and maybe I am. You won't be able to appreciate this in the distance, but I keep this small little diary in my pocket at all times. Okay, and each day, again, you won't appreciate it, but each day at the bottom of the day, you can see some numbers written here, right? There are some numbers written here. You see every day, any day I open at the bottom, you see numbers written. The numbers I've written are the number of steps I've taken on that day and what I've done. Like that, I've got this from 2008 onwards. And then I put, so from 2008 onwards, I might sound a little bit off the head, and Parsi people are supposed to be anyway a little crack. I can tell you from 2008 till today, any given day, how many steps I've taken.
Oh, excellent.
Excellent.
So we track blood pressure, we track cholesterol, you know, what you track, you change. What you track, you improve. So track it.
Yeah. So, Venu sir, some final comments.
Yeah, I think so. We have all enjoyed it. I think we never, so the time was actually flying. No, we never thought, I thought 30 minutes will be a very long time. Just went off without knowledge. And thank you so much, Ashish, for this wonderful discussion. There are a lot of comments from many of our friends that they have all enjoyed this discussion.
Thank you, sir.
Extremely.
We will have you more and more in our forum at some time in the future when we.
You know, I'm always happy to participate in any forum where people participate enthusiastically. To me, that's my high. That when people are there and there's fun and there's back and forth and there's questions, and that makes it all worth it, really.
And we will have the next CSI standing, huh?
No, I'm serious about this. Not the CSI standing, but have one. No, so many you have these rapid fire sessions, those 8-minute sessions, 10-minute sessions. Have them standing, 1 or 2 of them. It'll be nice. It'll be fun. It'll be setting a message. It'll be interesting.
So he will, next time he will say standing on one leg and have a CSI.
I think you have given the idea to Johnny. I think next meeting, if we have a physical meeting, Johnny can introduce slides.
He's a dangerous person. He'll make you stand and lift weights also while you're attending the meeting.
Farmers walk.
Not just, and he'll say, now take out your t-shirts and start lifting weights also.
There is another thing that just like standing, even lying down without sleeping is also equally bad. Just like sitting, even lying down without this thing is also equally bad.
You know, you asked for a parting thought. Now, I'll sorry. I mean, this is very interesting because last Sunday I spoke about this. I had this cardiology thing. Please, all of you, tomorrow, not today, enjoy your Saturday night. Google the Dallas bed rest study. Okay, Dallas, like the American city Dallas bed rest study. In 1966, in Dallas, they took 5 students, right, who must have been 20, 25 years old. They put them in bed rest for 3 weeks. Bed rest means bed rest, not getting out. The way people used to treat MIs 100 years ago, right? 6 weeks. So 3 weeks bed rest, 20-year-old. They took all their parameters, cardiac output, stroke volume, all those things that you can measure before the bed rest and 3 weeks later. What is great fun is 30 years later, in 1996, they repeated the study. And you know what they found? That the same parameters these young 20-year-olds had after 3 weeks of bed rest were the parameters that they had 30 years later. In simple words, that 3 weeks of complete bed rest was equivalent to 30 years of aging on cardiovascular parameters. So when you said the word supine, remind me, just being supine, today, under no condition apart from broken bones really, or high fevers and things like that, do we recommend complete bed rest for anything. Even with MI, you know, the moment things are stable, at least you're sitting in the bed, at least you're, you know, sitting in the chair, at least you're, you know, going to the bathroom on your own. So this is an interesting thing to look at.
Correct. Okay, so right. So Dr. Johnny, thank you for the excellent program, Dr. Rajan.
Thank you, sir. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it.
Thank you, Ashish. Thank you.
Thank you.
I must especially thank the person there, Sujay Renga, for having brought you here and have this planned in such a way that we have enough discussion. And discussion is the real thing, and we all learned from it. And again, thank you, Sujay, for that wonderful other faculty that have come, and Anil and team for the excellent the excellent gimmicks and the trolls they had that made this evening very, very enjoyable. Thank you all. Have a good
night.
Good night. Thank you. Thank you.